another thing, talking about what you're talking about, we also reference leasing convicts, convict labor.
Yeah.
This ant in particular might look familiar. He's a representation of John Henry, which you may remember, a very famous African American.
Beat the train was trying to beat the train.
Yeah, he was trying to beat the machine.
Yeah.
You can see he's beefier than the other ants that are in the poster. Also, we talk about.
He has the most songs.
Oh yeah, he has the most songs written about him, and sorry, boo. He has the most songs written about him than anybody else in American history, which is pretty fantastic. And we show, to further talk about convict leasing, we have this canary with a black bird in a cage. Now, canaries.
There's the stories about canaries in the coal mine. Like, what's the deal with that?
So oxygen levels that when the canary would die, it was either too late or it's time to get the hell out.
Right.
Basically,
So it's like an indicator species that's being used.
Yeah. Yeah, which is something they were doing with these people.
And the canaries that they were using were an African species.
Specifically, this convict leasing, it's put in here because convicts were very often used as scabs. So there's this really crazy dynamic when these folks actually did get together and like organize a union and stuff like this. All these different like various European immigrants, they would bring in oftentimes a lot of black folks as scabs and really like pit people off against each other across these like racial lines and stuff. Yeah,
happened in Detroit. And what years was that when that happened in Detroit? Before or Christ?
I'm not sure.
Right, start a riot too.
Yeah, but so lots of different divide and conquer tactics.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing is going on with the immigration, mixed Latin American people coming up. Is that kind of thing that a lot of people will still say that, you know, they're taking our jobs away, and they still really don't have a clue as to what's going on with that.
Sounds very familiar, right?
Yeah.
So, even though we talk about how oppressive the situation was and how many people were in a really rough spot, a lot of the people that we talk to still regard these years as the golden years, because even though these people were money poor, they were really rich in a lot of their culture. So it's a little hard to see, but we've got a dance going on. You can see this beetle right here is wearing a baseball uniform because they had baseball teams and community events. Here you can see these local foods that they've canned and gotten ready because, like I said, even though they didn't necessarily have tons of money, they had lots of rich foods that they're available to them. And they're celebrating their successes, union successes. Here we have a lightning bug setting up the electricity, because in a lot of these towns, they didn't get electricity until the 20s, 30s, 40s. One woman we spoke to told us that her grandmother didn't get electricity in her town until the 80s.
And these are the people that are bringing electricity to the rest of the country, right?
Exactly. And you can see these flags. I know they're a little hard to see. They're kind of hard to see over here too, but this has got a medical flag, a medical cross on it, and this is to represent safety standards, the 8-hour day, the weekend, minimum wage. All of these union victories are things that benefit all Americans today. We have so much that we owe to these miners who put their lives on the line a lot of time to get this stuff set up for us. This one right here is a little clock, 8s on it. Is it the 8-hour day? Ooh, this one's hard to see. I'm gonna point it over here. Here we have a bunch of miners leaving the mine, and they're rushing towards the mining town. And this is to represent a lot of the union battles and struggles that happened. This is particularly talking about the Battle of Blair Mountain. Is there anyone who can talk about the Battle of Blair Mountain to me? Acadia? Why, yes.
So the Battle of Blair Mountain was the second largest insurrection in U.S. history behind the Civil War. 15,000 coal miners gathered in Mingo and Logan County to set up a union by force. A lot of them were World War I vets, so they knew how to use their guns, and they had their guns, and they wore red bandanas. Some people say this is where the term redneck comes from. And they went in, and then the National Rangers?
U.S. Army Rangers.
U.S. Army Rangers were called out against them. And when they saw their brothers in arms, and in uniform, these are old World War vets, right? So when they saw the Rangers in their uniforms, they were like, we can't fight them, you know? We can't fight our brothers in uniform. And so they took off their bandanas, put their guns in trees under logs, and walked away. And so this might seem like a Union defeat, right? But people in this area really look back on this battle with a lot of like nostalgia and pride, because think about it, 15,000 people got together without Facebook, without the internet,
No Twitter.
no cell phones. Most of them didn't even have regular phones, and they would get together and, I mean, they hijacked trains to get there. So it's a good representation of the solidarity that was existing at that point.
How did they communicate, Greg?
Wow.
We wish we knew.
Yeah,
I know,
they, just,
right?
they,
They
had,
still knew how to do that.
they had
you know?
such a well-organized union network. I can't say exactly, right?
Letter
But-
writing part?
But it took weeks for them to all gather, and there are a lot of other stories. Someone told us this really great story about a huge Union victory that was called the Battle of Coal Creek, when several thousand miners got together because this company had brought in all these scabs to replace these striking workers, and the convict scabs, and they went and they pushed back the National Guard 3 times. They marched on the jail where the convicts were coming from. They literally tore the walls of the jail down and released everyone, and then proceeded on to the boss's house. And we're like, okay, now pay us what you owe. Obviously the boss conceded, and folks got what they were asking for, which was a living wage and like decent safety standards. And we have so much to thank union coal miners for. You know, not only the 8-hour day, but the weekend, minimum wage, occupational safety standards were originally mine workers' safety standards. What am I forgetting? Workers' compensation. You know, all this stuff. These union coal miners were spearheading all of these really important labor history victories in this country.
Right.
So the unions grew ever stronger. They kept winning. They kept using the tactics that won them victories over and over again. And no matter what the coal companies tried to do, they couldn't knock them down until the advent of the mechanization. Suddenly there were these machines that could do the coal miners' jobs much faster and with much less men. So here we have a drawing of this thing called the continuous mining machine, and it's eating up coal workers' lunch pails and hats. And here we have these two 70s style activists fighting against it. And here in the dead center we have an illustration of what it's like today after the advent of mechanization, what it's like for a miner at these mountaintop removal sites, and it's one of the most important drawings in the poster. I'm just going to do it over here because you can barely see that. So here we have a frog, and he's doing what we call the dance of hard choices. Now, frogs are an indicator species, like we've referenced before. Frogs show more than other species immediate signs of what's going wrong in the ecosystem, which is why we chose to use them. So the miner is detonating the explosive that's blowing up the mountain over here, and he's receiving a paycheck in return. He goes home in step 2, and his tadpole is pouring black water out of the tap, and he's got pain in his kidneys from the environment that he's living in. And he goes to the doctor and has to pay lots of money for very expensive prescription medication and for buying lots of bottled water for his tadpole. And in step 4, the tadpole has grown up and has legs, and his legs, which is cute. And the miner has only a little bit of change left, and the child frog is looking towards the bus stop to leave town.
Out of Dodge.
Yeah, out of Dodge. We've heard that in the past 30 years, 3 million people have left West Virginia. There's no more infrastructure in these places a lot of times. There's just no jobs. There's not really any option for these young people to stick around. And like we said, the less people for the coal company, less people who live there, the less problems it is for the coal company.
So, just in case it's not clear, mountaintop removal is the most extreme form of mechanization of resource extraction. It used to be one of these underground mines would employ about 200 people. Now a mountaintop removal site employs 10 to 12, and they're extracting the coal at 10 times the rate. So, you know, that's, I mean, that ends up being whatever, less than 5% of the jobs that used to exist, right? And